it's Jennifer from Flux. In this video, I'm going to show you how to crochet this beautiful berry patch tee. This is a really lovely kind of drapey, warm weather top that you can easily make with 2 squares, and we're going to add a little bottom to it to make it more of like a tunic. This is the Design Along with Hobie project that I've been sharing on Instagram. So if you're not following me on Instagram, hop on over and follow me at Flux. This was a really cool project because it was designed by all of you. So I asked what you would like. I gave some square options, I gave some neck opening options, and we took the Blue Skies Granny Tee, which was a past crochet along, and we reimagined the whole thing. So this one is a little bit more open, lighter weight, drapier, a little less fitted, just kind of like loose and airy, and it has a nice extension down the bottom with a little split. So all of you voted on that as well. So we are going to learn how to, oh, and I wanted to show you one more thing. We did a corner to corner granny square. So it has a really cool diagonal design when you wear it. We're going to learn how to make the squares. It's 2 squares sandwiched on top of one another. We're going to learn how to seam it all up to create armholes, a neck hole, and the bottom opening. And then finally, we're going to learn how to add some rows to the bottom of this and kind of extend it and create a really stylish split. So it kind of allows for ease of movement as you wear it as well. So we're going to go through the whole project, and I'm also going to show you how to really customize this top so that you can make it any size you like. Now mine here, based on the size of the square you make, is really how big this top is going to be or how small. And it's super customizable. And the finished one I have here is about 19 inches across and 22 inches tall. So we're going to talk about more though how you can customize this. So let's get started. For this project, you'll need a pair of scissors, a tapestry needle. A tape measure will be super helpful to measure and get the fit that you need. We're going to be using a 5mm H crochet hook. And then for our yarn, we're going to be using this beautiful yarn cake. This is called Dahlia Mixo from Hobie, and this is a 100% cotton, and it's really neat. It's like strands of thread, so it's like a lightweight cotton yarn, but it's like a couple strands of threads. This one has 4 in a dark purple, a pale purple, a medium purple, and like a fuchsia color, and it makes this really pretty yarn. The color that I have here is called Forest Fruit, and it's color 07, and this is a number 2 fine on the yarn weight scale. And it recommends a E through G crochet hook. I'm going to go up to an H crochet hook because I want it to have some drape and to just kind of like drape nicely off the body. This yarn cake here that you see is 874 yards, 800 meters, 200 grams. And again, it's 100% cotton. So it is going to make a nice, pretty, airy, kind of lightweight top for us. And again, if you need to substitute, look for that 2 fine on the yarn weight scale. So let's get started. As a side note, all of the links to the scissors, the hook, the yarn, everything can be found down below if you'd like to get any of these items for yourself as well. Now, like I mentioned before, we're going to be working a corner to corner granny square to begin our top. We're going to make 2 of them and kind of sandwich them together and seam so that there's armholes and a neck hole, etc. So what we need to do is grab our yarn and our hook. Now, I didn't mention this before, but Hobie has on their yarn cakes, they put a little, and I've snipped it already, but they put a little, like a tab on here, so you don't have to dig around in your yarn cake looking for the yarn end, which I just absolutely love, just as a side note. Okay, so we're going to begin our square in 2 parts. We're going to begin at one of the corners, and we're going to work outward and upward, increasing. And then when we get the width that we need for our square, we're going to come back in and work inward and decrease on our square. So for part 1, we're going to increase first, okay? So what we need to do first is put a slip knot on our hook. Wrap the yarn around your fingers to make a loop, bring the yarn behind the loop, reach in with your hook, bring up a loop, and tighten. Next, what we're going to do is chain 6. To make a chain, wrap the yarn around the hook, and bring it through the loop. That's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. Then we're going to go into the chain farthest from the hook, and we're going to work a slip stitch into that, and that will create a ring that will work our stitches into. Now we're not going to be working in the round. It's kind of different, but we are going to work that first row into the ring, and then we're going to work back and forth in rows for the rest of it. Okay, so go into that chain farthest from the hook down here at the end, insert the hook, wrap yarn around hook and bring up a loop. Then bring that loop through the loop already on your hook. We now have a ring that we're going to work into. Now, to save yourself a step later, you can hold this tail along the edges you work, and then we're going to work row 1. So for row 1, we're going to chain 4. 1, 2, 3, and 4. And then that counts, that chain 4 we just did counts as a double crochet chain 1. And you know what? I'm going to zoom way in so you can see this a little bit better. So that chain 4 counts as a double crochet chain 1. Next, we're going to work 3 double crochets into the center of the ring. To make a double crochet, wrap yarn around hook, insert it into the ring, bring up a loop. You'll have 3 loops on the hook. Wrap yarn around hook, bring through the first 2 loops, wrap yarn around hook, bring it through the last 2 loops. That's a double crochet, but we need 3. So let's work the next one. And then the third one, just like that. And then what we're going to do next is chain 1, and then we're going to work another double crochet into the center of the ring. That's going to create the one corner of our square. So just work your double crochet just like that, okay? For row 2, row 1 is complete. For row 2, what we're going to do is chain 4. 1, 2, 3, and 4. And then we're going to turn our work. And then in that first chain space of the row, see that space right there? That first space of the row, we're going to work 3 double crochet chain 1. So 1 double crochet, 2 double crochet, and 3 double crochet, and then we're going to chain 1. Next, you want to skip over this group of 3 double crochets from the previous row, and in that last space, that last chain 1 space, what we're going to do is work 3 double crochet. So 1, 2, and 3, and then we're going to work a chain 1 and then 1 more double crochet into the same space, okay? So we're starting to get the beginnings of our square. It doesn't really look too much like, it's actually going to be a rectangle first actually, but it doesn't really look like much so far. But as we build the rows, it'll start to look like, sort of like a wedge shape, okay? So let's move on to row 3. Row 3 is kind of what we'll do for the rest of the increase portion of our little increase of our square. So for row 3, what we're going to do is chain 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Turn your work, and then in that first chain 1 space of the row right here, what we're going to do is work 3 double crochet chain 1. So in that space, 1 double crochet, whoops, I dropped my loop, 2 double crochet, whoops, let's redo that one. There we go. 2 double crochet and 3 double crochet, and then we're going to chain 1. And then we're going to work 3 double crochet chain 1 in each chain 1 space across. Now right now we only have 1 right here in the middle, but as our increase grows wider and taller, we're going to have more. So anywhere you see a chain 1 space across the row, we're going to work 3 double crochet, chain 1. So in that chain 1 space, we're going to work 3 double crochet, chain 1. So 1 double crochet, 2 double crochet, and 3 double crochet, and then chain 1. So as it grows, like I mentioned before, there'll be more of these as the row gets longer, okay? But for now, what we're going to do is go to this last chain 1 space of the row. So you want to skip over that group of 3 double crochets here, go to that last chain 1 space, and in that space, we're going to work 3 double crochet, chain 1, 1 double crochet, okay? So work your 3 double crochet first, 1 double crochet, 2 double crochet, get a little bit more yarn here, and 3 double crochet, then chain 1, then work 1 double crochet in that same space, okay? So row 3, once again, is the row you'll repeat over and over and over for the increase part. So let me move my hook out of the way here. And what I'd like to do, every couple of rows or so, I like to just kind of sharpen up those sides. They'll shift a little bit if you do that. And we have a nice little right triangle happening. It's nice and open and lacy. And what we're going to do is repeat row 3 over and over and over again until our square is nice and wide. Now you want it to cover the front and sides of your body. Now at this point you can decide as you make your square, or your increase part rather, along the bottom here will be the width of your piece. So do you want it to be more fitted? You know, make it come in more. Do you want it to be looser and airier? You'll want it to go a little past those points of your body. So go around your hips and around the waist and around the bust, and just make sure that when you wrap it around your body before you start decreasing again to make a square shape, while it's still a triangle shape like this, that bottom edge, you want to make sure it wraps around you comfortably, okay? You can grab your tape measure and you can pre-measure those areas of your body and kind of jot it down. Or sometimes when I'm getting up to the end, I'll pull out the amount that I need and just sort of like have it nearby. But keep working row 3 over and over and over until the bottom edge is as wide as you would like it to be, okay? So when we rejoin, our triangle will be much, much wider and taller. It'll be taller this way, it'll be wider this way, and we are going to learn how to bring it back in and decrease now. One more thing I meant to mention before is when you're working the granny C2C corner to corner increase, before you start to decrease, so as you work your rows over and over and over again, you want to make sure you have an even number of rows before you decrease. So get it the size that you need and make sure it's an even number of rows. Now, as you can see here, we have an odd number of rows. 1, 2, 3, we've worked together. So you want to make sure you have an even number of rows. It doesn't matter how many, as long as it fits you the way you want it to, but as long as it's an even number so we can bring it back in. Just working that last stitch of our row for our increase portion. Just going to finish that up, and then what we're going to do is start the decrease. But before that, I just want to zoom out a little bit because I want to show you what we've done so far. Let me just turn it. So this is eventually going to be a square. So it has a flat bottom now and angles up, and then it goes straight up on this side. So we're going to start decreasing and bringing it back in so it becomes a square. But I wanted to show you, now like I mentioned before, you'll have to work an even number of rows before you start decreasing. So I worked 30 rows of this so I can start decreasing now. Now you'll want to work, you may want to work the same number of rows or not, depending on how wide or narrow you need it to be. Mine was, let me just grab my, just straighten everything out here so I get an accurate measurement. Mine was, we go from one end along this bottom edge all the way across. I got about 20 inches. Now also, because I'm using cotton yarn, I can block this and make it much bigger if I want it to, or not, either or. But just as a side note, if you want to block yours later as well. Now, I am going to start decreasing. So let's bring it back over here where we left off. And the decrease part is very easy. We're just going to be repeating, I'm going to show you how to do one row of the decrease, and then you'll just repeat that same row over and over again until your piece comes back up to a point again, and then I'll show you what to do next. So all you need to do for the row 1 of our decrease is to chain 4, 1, 2, 3, and 4, and then we're going to turn our work. So flip it over, and then remember that first chain 1 space that we've been working into? We're going to skip over that this time, okay? So go into that next space, and we're going to work in this first space here. We're skipping the first space, but in that next space we're going to work 3 double crochet, 1, 2, and 3 double crochets, and then we're going to chain 1, and then we're going to do the same thing in each chain 1 space all the way across. And then when you get to the end, right before we get to the end, I'll show you what to do. So let's do a couple more of these together. So hop over to the next chain 1 space and do the same thing. 3 double crochet, 1, 2, 3, chain 1, okay? So just do that all the way across, and you can already see it's rounding back in, okay? So just do that all the way across, and then when we get towards the end of this row, I'm going to show you how to finish off the row on this side as well. All right, I'm just coming up to the very end of the row. This is the last group of the 3 double crochets of our row. Now we're at the end, and here is our turning chain space at the end. We're going to work we did our 3 double crochets, then we're going to work a chain 1, same thing we've been doing. Now instead of working the 3 double crochet, chain 1, 1 double crochet at the end here, that would keep increasing it. So we want to bring it back in. So all we're going to do to finish up the row is locate that topmost chain of the turning chain. Mine is right here, that little loop at the top. And all I'm going to do is work a double crochet into that topmost chain of our turning chain, okay? So just go right in there and work your double crochet to finish off the row, okay? And so that is going to start rounding back in too. All right, so to finish your square, all you're going to do is repeat the row that we just did over and over and over again, and I can zoom out so you can see better. We're going to be repeating that over and over and over again until we bring it back up to a point. Now, right before we get to that top point, we're going to rejoin and kind of work that very top part together. So keep going with your decrease row, and we'll rejoin in just a minute. Just coming up on that last stitch of our row, of the second to last row, rather. So I'm just working that last double crochet, and now we have just 1 row left. So you're going to have a side space, a center space, and a side space, and that is going to be our last row. So once again, we're going to chain 4, 1, 2, 3, and 4, and then turn our work. And we're going to open this up in just a minute. I'm going to show you everything. And then so just turn your work, and then we're going to hop over that first space, and then go right into that middle space, and we're going to work 3 double crochet. So 1, 2, and 3, and then we're going to chain 1, and then we're going to work in that same chain at the top there, work a double crochet to finish off the row. Same thing we've been doing. I just wanted to show you that very last row so you can see what it looks like. Okay, and so now we have a corner. All right, so what we want to do now, we're done our square. And let me just zoom out so you can see everything a little bit better. I'm going to grab my scissors and cut the yarn, and then we're going to wrap the yarn around the hook and fasten off, just like that. And then let's open things up a little bit and see what we have. Now we've been working from the point up, got it really wide, and then came back in, and then worked up to our top point up here, okay? So you can see we have a top point now. So what we want to do now is we're going to turn it so that it is a square. It's been kind of like a diamond shape this whole time we've been working on it. So now we have a lovely, lovely square. So when we turn this into our granny tee, it's going to have some nice diagonal stripes, okay? So the next thing you'll want to do is make another one. Now, pay special attention when you're making your square. Pay special attention to how many rows you work when you get to the increase, and then how many for the decrease, and then how many total rows. You want the squares to be identical to one another. You want two exact same squares. And then once we have that second square made, I'm going to show you how to seam everything together. And then we're going to come down to the bottom of our tee, and we're going to add a little bit of an extension to make it more of a tunic instead of a crop, because everyone voted for the to have it elongated a little bit, okay? So I just wanted to show you too my cake. I have plenty of yarn to make a second square and elongate it. If you're concerned about how much yarn you have left, you can always throw your finished square onto a scale and see how many ounces it weighs, and throw your yarn onto a scale and just to make sure you have enough. Be sure to save yourself a little bit of yarn for the elongated part. Now remember when we made our Blue Skies granny tee, when we did 2 classic granny squares and sandwiched them like we're doing here, but we're just doing a different type of square. Some people even did a different yarn on the back and the front, so it was like a different look. And some people did the 2 squares in the same yarn, but they did a different color for the elongated part, just to give it like a nice little like color block band. So feel free to get really creative with this and kind of mix it up if you like also. So go ahead and make your second square, and when we rejoin, we'll have 2 identical squares, and we're going to seam them up next. Okay, just working that very last stitch of the row to complete my second square. And then I'm just going to grab my scissors and cut the yarn. And we're going to fasten off, wrap the yarn around the hook, bring it through. I'm just going to tighten that a little bit. Okay, so we have 2 squares. As you can see, actually, as you cannot see because I didn't zoom out. Let me zoom out so you can see. We have 2 beautiful squares. What we're going to do is you'll want to, these are reversible, so you can really position your angles, your diagonal stripes with your granny stripes that you made for your square. You can really position this however you want, okay? So I'm just sort of straightening everything out right now, because what we're going to do next is sandwich this together. So I'm going to make mine in the bottom right corner. I'm going to position mine. I'm going to lay mine down. This is where I started. And I'm going to lay that down so it's in the bottom right corner, because I want my stripes to go this way, okay? And then I'm going to do the same. I'm going to grab my second square, and just make sure as a side note that you work the same number of rows for each square. And what we need to do is, see, I have my 2 starting corners down here together in the same spot. What we're going to do next is seam our piece together. So make sure it's all lined up, and I'm just going to fix this top part here, get these tails. We'll deal with these tails later. I'm just going to get everything lined up. So what we need to do is we need to next seam. This is going to be open. This is the bottom where you put it on, and we're going to seam up the side here up to the underarm to make, this will be the armhole, this will be the side, and then we're going to do the same on this side. So when we seam, we're going to make sure that we look at the side here, and we have 1, 2, 3, 4, however many rows, and it's the same on both sides, okay? So you might want to get a stitch marker and mark things off, line them up, mark things off. And then we're going to come up to the top here. And it looks very boxy right now, but when you wear this, because of the cotton and the really thin nature of this yarn, it's going to drape beautifully, okay? So what we're going to do at the top is we're going to mark this part at either corner, and we're going to come in and create the neck hole. Now you want to make sure you don't make it as wide as your neck. You want to make it as wide as your head because your head has to go through there, okay? If you make it as wide as your neck, you'll never be able to put it on, okay? So make sure that even if you need to take a measurement, make sure that the neck opening is going to be wide enough for your head to go through. And you don't want it to be exactly, you know, you won't want to be like shoving it on. You want it to, you know, and it'll actually make for a really flattering neckline. What it's going to do, because it's so drapey, it's going to sort of slouch a little bit, almost like a cowl neck. Okay, so I'm going to grab some stitch markers and we're going to start kind of pinning this. Okay, so I got my little box of stitch markers. What I'm going to do, remember this is the neck opening, so I'm going to spin it around. And what I need to do is pin the two corners to start. Okay, so locate that stitch. Now I have a little space here and a little space here next to that topmost stitch. So I'm going to pin right in that little space there on both layers so that it's lined up. Okay, so pin that corner, and then we're going to come around here and we're going to pin this corner. So I have two ends where I ended up here. I'm going to put that through the same space on both layers. Okay, so now they're lined up, and now we can start to create the neck hole. We're going to pin everything. It's almost like sewing. We're going to pin it all together, kind of like when you have a sewing pattern, and then you can go to work. Okay, is it weird that I have to have the colors match? So I'm going to do yellow for this one, just to let me know where I'm at here. Okay, so everything's lined up, and what you'll want to do is you want to see these clusters. They're sort of side, actually let me zoom in so you can see. See how these double crochet clusters are sort of sideways? I'm going to count my spaces. So 1, 2, and let me back up so you can see here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. I'm going to come in 8. Okay, and then I'm going to pin that one. And then I'm going to grab the same color because things like, silly things like that are important to me. So I'm going to go with my spaces. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. And before you commit, just make sure that you pop it over your head and that you can get everything through. If you need to bump this out a space, you know, go back a space if it's a little snug. I'm just going to do that to show you. Feel free to do that, okay? And make sure when you're using these stitch markers that you don't snag a little delicate piece of yarn and pull a loop out, okay? All right, so I have the shoulders marked. I have the neck opening marked. I wanted to make it a little bit open so that it would slouch a little bit. And so I'm going to seam from here to here and from here to here, and that's going to be the shoulders. Okay, now that that top part's pinned, I'm going to turn my work and we're going to create the arm opening next. So I'm going to grab another color and we're going to go down to the bottom and pin that bottom corner just so that part is lined up. And I'm just going to put that on there and then do the same on the other side. These bottom edges here, I'm just going to pin right in one of those side spaces, okay, just to indicate to me what the bottom is, okay? So here's the top of our piece and we're going to make our armhole. So I'm going to turn it, and what we want to do is same thing we did before. You want to count the number of spaces so that you can duplicate it on the other side, okay? So here is our space. We're going to go 1, 2, 3, 4. I'm going through both layers and I lost count. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. All right, so 12 spaces down. I'm going to throw a stitch marker in there. Okay, and I have an arm opening. And it's okay if you want it to be a little loose and kind of fluttery. All right, turn, 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 turn. Remember that was 12 spaces. And these are just my own personal preferences. You can make yours 20 spaces. It's totally up to you. And I didn't count the space where this marker was in, So we're going to go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And actually, and I'm looking at this, I'm going to grab my tape measure because this was done on an angle and these spaces are much bigger than these spaces. So in this instance, instead of counting the spaces, we're going to measure, okay, just for good measure, no pun intended. All right, so go from one stitch marker, opening, down, down, down to that other stitch marker. These spaces on this side are much bigger. You can see on this side they're little, okay, just because everything's at an angle. It is about 9 1/4. So I'm going to turn, get my stitch marker ready, get everything nice and straightened back up. Now I know we're spending a lot of time doing this, but it's important so that you get your shirt perfectly, the openings perfect and everything nice and neat, okay? All right, so let's do 9 1/4 down this side from our stitch marker, or whatever size you need. So 9 1/4 is right here, and here is a side space. Make sure it's lined up and nothing is crooked. And we're going to put our marker in there, okay? So measuring in that instance was the way to go. Okay, we have our piece all set up. You can hear all those stitch markers as I move it. We're gonna go ahead and seam. So grab a tapestry needle, and I'm gonna zoom back in. Now, our cake here, we have enough yarn to do all the seaming, and we have enough to, in the poll that I had when we designed this together, everybody wanted a tunic. So at the bottom, the next part of our tutorial, we're going to add, and everybody wanted a split, like a split extension, okay? So what we're going to do is we're going to add the extension with the remaining yarn. But first, let's get to seaming. That's the next part. So what we're going to do is we're going to take the yarn. You want to use the matching yarn, and I'm going to cut about 24 inches and thread my tapestry needle. Now 24 inches is probably a little long, but I like to do a little more versus not enough. And you can pick any one of these. So we're going to seam from, let me zoom back out. We're going to seam from this stitch marker, the bottom of the arm, the underarm, down the side to the bottom hip. We're going to do the same thing on that side. And then we're going to seam from the neck opening to the end of the shoulder, the neck opening to the end of the shoulder. All right, you can pick any side you like. I'm going to start with this left arm area down to the bottom. So just leave your stitch markers in for now. It keeps it easy to see and remember kind of where you're at with it, because it still does very much look like just a square at this time. Okay, so we're going to do a whip stitch. We're going to go in both layers here, leaving that stitch marker in, and be very careful because it's thin, delicate yarn. And again, this is reversible, so we're going to do all of our seaming and then turn it right side out, okay? So it doesn't matter if it's inside out or right side out when you place the squares because they are reversible. So I put the needle through, almost all the way through, and I'm just going to tie it with a nice knot. And you want to keep your finish work, your seaming and all your finish work nice and neat. All right, and now we're going to hold these two pieces together like a sandwich. And we're going to go through 2 loops of the bottom layer and 2 loops of the top layer and whip stitch. If you're not familiar with the whip stitch, it's just kind of like a spiral through your work. It's a nice flat invisible seam, and it's a nice kind of all-purpose seam. I use it pretty much all the time for my seaming. And my stitch marker is in the way after I just said it was okay to leave it, but it's okay. It'll be out of the way soon. Okay, and then we're just going to go all the way down here with our seam, okay? So go ahead and work your whip stitch down to the next stitch marker down at the bottom, okay? All right, I'm just coming up to the bottom of this first seam that we're adding. And when you get to the bottom and you're done your seam, you're going to pull it almost all the way through till there is a loop. So when you get to that loop, whoops, grab your needle and take it through that loop and pull it to tighten. And then you can snip the yarn. Okay, we're going to take care of the ends in just a bit. Okay, so now that we have our seam, another good idea is to check it too. And it looks great. It looks nice and neat. I like how the angles are sort of like converging into that line. Okay, so the next thing you'll need to do is do the rest of your seams. Okay, so that same whip stitch, the same way, let me zoom out, the same way we've been doing this, you want to seam just like that. So do a seam, we did a seam here, so you're going to go hop on over across, do your next seam. And then come up to the top, do your shoulder seams here and here, okay? So go ahead and do your next seams. If you get turned around, I also have a photo sort of mapping this out on the Flux blog. You can check the link down below if you need sort of like a photo reference. But go ahead and do all that seaming. And then the next thing and final thing we're gonna do is we're gonna extend the bottom of this and make it into more of a tunic. Okay, so we're all seamed up. Now we officially have a neck opening and we have armholes. So it's getting exciting. All right, so the next thing we need to do is take off our stitch markers. Okay, so go ahead and pop those off because we're going to turn this right side out and we're going to add our little tunic extension next. Okay, it's super easy. It's just some granny stripes that we're going to do across the front, and then we'll sort of make like another flap across the back. Okay, so these will be worked in rows. Okay, so go ahead and we're just taking out all these stitch markers because we don't need to mark our spot anymore. Everything's all stitched up, and I had 2 across the bottom here. Okay, so here is, now I got lost here. Okay, here's the underneath. So when you put it on, that's where your head would go through, okay? So what we're going to do is we're going to carefully reach in. I'm going to grab these shoulders and we're going to flip it out and look at it for the first time as a seamed up garment. And I really am loving how this is like slouchy a little bit. It's so light and just has some beautiful drape. The neck is already, I'm already seeing a little bit of like some flutter and some little slouchy cow neck here. So next we need to tackle the bottom, okay? So let's slide our piece upward. We're gonna not worry about the top right now. And we need to grab our crochet hook again. And, oh, I also wanted to point out, if you did your seam and kept everything lined up, it will look really nice when you open it back up too, okay? Okay, so what we want to do, this is the bottom. So what we have to do to crochet this though is flip it around. So it's upside down, okay? Now go up to the upper right corner and you'll want to locate where your seam was. And we're going to get all these little tails out of the way. And then you're going to go into that first space. Now we're going to treat the spaces, let me zoom in so you can see because it's hard to see from far away. We're going to treat the spaces like they're going to be diagonal. So these little loops in between each diagonal cluster is what we're going to call the spaces, okay? So grab your yarn, and we have some on our cake, plenty to do our tunic extension. So if we look at our piece, actually let me zoom in even more. If we look at our piece here, here is our seam. So find the first space right here and insert your hook. And then we're going to hook the new yarn on. And actually, this is looking really busy. There's lots going on here. Let me get it so that the white is behind it so you can see it really good. Okay, there we go. Okay, we're going to, hang on, I want to get this all situated so you can see it the best. Okay, we put our hook in that first space that you see. We're going to hook the new yarn on, bring it through, and we're just going to tie it right on. And if this helps you, and it may, grab a stitch marker. Again, once again, I'm going to grab bright yellow so you can see it really good. Grab a stitch marker and you can just put a stitch marker where you begin. So as you work, we're going to work rows, back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. As you work your rows, you can stop when you get to the stitch marker, okay? So again, we're going to leave that tail alone. And then we're going to go back into our space with our hook, bring up a loop, and then we're going to chain 3. Sorry, chain 3. 1, 2, and 3. And then in that same space, work 2 double crochet. We're just doing a simple little granny stripe. 1 and 2, just like that. Okay? Then we're going to chain 1, and we're going to hop over to the next space. Now remember that space was in between those diagonal clusters, okay? So in that next space, we're going to work 3 double crochet, chain 1. And we're going to do that in every space across, okay? So 1, 2, 3, chain 1. Next space, 3 double crochet, chain 1. 1, 2, 3, chain 1. Next space, remember the spaces, those loops underneath those diagonal groups of double crochets. 1, 2, 3. You can see we're already getting a little bit of length on there. 1, 2, 3, chain 1, 3 double crochet, 1, 2, 3, chain 1. Okay, so what we're going to do in every space all the way across until we get to the other side, and before you get to the other side, feel free to add a stitch marker in that last space as well, so you know where to stop. Okay, so just all the way across, work 3 double crochet, chain 1, and then when we get towards the end of this row, we'll rejoin and I'll show you how to keep going. Just coming up to the end of the row, and I'm in that last space, and as you can see, there's the stitch marker letting us know to stop. So 3 double crochet, 1, 2, 3, okay? And now we're at the end. So we have a nice little edge along the bottom here, and we're going to add 1 more row just to give it a little bit more length. Now you can keep repeating these rows to give it a lot more length if you like, but we're going to do 1 more and then kind of wrap it up. So for row 2 of our tunic edge, we're going to do a chain 4, 1, 2, 3, and 4. And then we're going to turn our work. Okay, so we're going to leave our stitch markers on just to give us an indicator here. And then in the first space here that you see, we're going to work a chain, 3 double crochet, excuse me, 1, 2, 3, chain 1. And then we're going to do that all the way across. That chain 4 that we did was like a double crochet chain 1. It counted as that, okay? So just keep doing in each of these spaces all the way across till you get to the other end. Work 3 double crochet, chain 1 in each one of these spaces. All right, coming up to the end of the row, I'm just working that last little 3 double crochet group. And then to finish the row, see here's our stitch marker, so we know we're at the end of the row here. We're going to do a chain 1, and then we're going to do a double crochet in the topmost chain of this one here on the end, okay? So we did a chain 3 and turn the previous row, so just go to the very end here, and right in that topmost area, work a double crochet to finish off the row, okay? So now we have our little tunic edge, and what we're going to do is cut the yarn and fasten off. And then we're going to repeat. Now let's look at it first. So you can see the bottom here. It's been extended a little bit. And if we look at the side view where our stitch marker is, you can see we've added a little bit of length to our piece. So then what you're going to do is flip your top over so that it's on the other side. Put the neck hole part at the top. And then what you can do is slide your stitch markers over to the other side on the back. Okay, so that first space on the back side, and then come over here to the other side and take that stitch marker out, and we're going to put it in the first space on the back side on the other side as well. Okay, so now we have 2 stitch markers here, and you want to repeat rows 1 and 2 on this side as well. So if you need to back up the video to see that again, go ahead and do that. But we're just going to be repeating rows 1 and 2 on this side as well to get that nice split tunic extension. Okay, we have added both front and back our little extension. It adds just a little bit of length, and when I popped it on, it was just enough. Now you can keep repeating row 1 and 2, alternate back and forth to add more length if you like as well. When you're done everything, just go around and look for any ends that you need to weave in. I have one here I'm going to do with you. So I have my tapestry needle. I'm just going to thread it, and I'm going to try and go in the back loops of these just so it's hidden. I'm just going to go in one direction. I like to go in one direction like this. I'm going to try and take it along this seam and then come back in the other direction just to kind of lock that tail into place, okay? Then you can just snip that off, and our tunic, our tee, is complete. And it looks amazing. I just love it, and it looks even better on. So that is how you crochet the berry patch tee. Thanks so much for watching, and be sure and click the subscribe button to get all the latest Flux video updates. Thanks again.